A scene of a death sentence involving the protagonist, who was accused of infiltrating a reception in honor of a victory and trying to kill the crown prince with the help of the black mafia. In turn, the girl wanted to convey that she was trying to save people, but no matter how she shouted, no one believed her, but she mockingly replied that she would not have believed it either. His Majesty was very indignant at the fact that he had given the girl a lot of opportunities, but he did not see a drop of remorse in her, and sentenced her to death by hanging so that no one else would dare to challenge the imperial family. The heroine was happy that this painful and miserable life would finally end at this moment. The appearance of Duke Soleil caused the girl a great shock, which last time she saw him very wounded by the horns of the monster, but she was glad that he was not injured. The Duke cut the rope on which the girl was hanging, which caused the Emperor's anger, but then he drew his sword and shot the heroine. She thanked him, saying that he was a good man, which confused Herzog because he had no idea that she knew him. Blue flames appeared around the girl's body. It was everywhere and frightened the Emperor's guards and the public, which is why the guards insisted on taking cover. The heroine told the Duke that if he had been the person who took her from the shelter, her life would have been different. The Duke replied that he hoped she would feel at least a little calmer. When she woke up, she looked around and was shocked to see that she was alive, but even more surprised to find herself in the same basement as 9 years ago. Her memories were interrupted by Aunt Anna's shout from the shelter, saying that there was still a lot of work to be done and that the girl should not ignore her. Looking at her aunt, who looked exactly the same as she did 9 years ago, and at her small limbs, which did not look like an adult, she again felt the same disturbing feeling. Déjà vu. The aunt began to wipe the girl, and she began to realize with shock that she had returned to the same day. The aunt asked the girl to spread her arms, but the girl stopped her, reminding her that she had a lot of work to do, and other children also needed to be washed. The girl asked her aunt to give her a towel, and that she would dry herself and sit quietly, and her aunt listened to her and gave her a towel and told her to sit quietly. She remembered that the child who bathed after her in the line was supposed to fall, and when it really happened, she had no doubt that she had really returned 9 years ago to the very beginning. She was upset that she had to go through this hellish life and miserable end again. She could not believe it and thought it was impossible, but realized that maybe this was her chance. To begin with, she decided that she had to escape from the shelter at any cost, because that was the only way she would be able to escape from the same person. Raffia Grenier is the only survivor of the Grenier clan, a special child who possessed a spiritual power that few in the clan can use, and she was one of them. The Grenier clan, which possessed special powers, has long been used in the interest of influential people, and their end has always been tragic. In order to prevent a number of evil events, they hid in a shelter in the most steep gorge of the continent, the Magente, where they built a village and lived peacefully, but it did not last long. There was a terrible disaster in the forest. There were flames everywhere, and as a result, it was not a natural forest fire, so the name of their clan came to an end. The woman took Raffia by the hand and approached the elder and asked if they should save this child, saying that they may not know, but they should entrust Raffia to the will of the Lord. The elder called the girl to him, but she was afraid. He emphasized that her power will soon manifest itself, but she must hide it and live quietly. But most importantly, she must never forget who she is. Raffia was intercepted by a man and brought to the others, who were disappointed that they had captured only one little girl. They brought the girl to the same place that the man had told them about, and after leaving the girl in the shelter, their work was done. The place where she was brought, and where she stayed for a short time, was a strange orphanage, where they employed children, saying that they were helping them to become independent, but in reality, they received huge donations for this. Since the children were the source of income for the shelter, they hired a large number of guards to watch over the children. The girl knew that if she tried to escape recklessly, she would be captured again, and the supervision would be stricter. Thinking about it all, Raffia knew that she had only one chance. That person would come to take her today. She waited for him, and he appeared, saying her name with a smile and emphasizing that he was glad to meet her. The man who was in the shelter took the girl outside, pointed to the carriage, and said that her new guardian was there, and she should always behave politely and do everything carefully. While they were signing the contract, Raffia broke away and ran away. It would seem that here is freedom. But she turned into a dead end. There was nowhere to run. The guards caught up with her, while they were considering whether they would break her legs for escaping. The heroine realized that she did not want to give up right now. Knowing that she was not yet old enough to use spiritual power, she realized that she had to at least try, and she succeeded. Rafia used her power to deprive the guards of movement, and then made them lose their minds and fall. After that, the girl fell to her knees. She was glad that she had succeeded, although it was too much. Her body was so weak that she did not even have the strength to move. After the stranger told her that she had an amazing gift, the heroine was shocked by the fact that he was watching her all the time. However, the guy immediately reassured the girl, saying that he was going to help her. It was the very voice she wanted to hear. She immediately asked the stranger to take her to Saleya, and not to take her to that man. However, the man decided that it was time to show his abilities. He forced her to say the words with which she killed the man. The stranger laughed and said that she had just used her powers and began to fulfill her duty. She is a special child, and he was counting on her in the future. Rafia woke up in an unfamiliar place, which confused her, but the man said that he had brought her to the place she had asked for, which was Saleya. During breakfast, she spoke to the Kazine of Saleh and thanked him for saving her. He wondered why, before she fainted, she asked him to take her to Saleya, since neither he nor his family had any connection to it. The heroine explained that Yuri, who was a guardian in his past life, was not the only person. Several other people called each other by this name and used it for all kinds of evil deeds. Although they harbored evil against the Duchy of Saleh, they were afraid because Kazine Saleh was a threat to them, and she believed that only they could protect her. The girl begged to be left, and she would do everything the Duke said. The guy was surprised what she could do with such a small body. She asked to wait a little, at least 3 years, and she would be able to do anything. The Duke was interested in what she would be able to do in 3 years, to which the girl replied that she would be able to kill all the people the boy hated. He wondered how, but the girl replied that when the time came, she would succeed. He liked Rafia's confidence, so he allowed her to stay, and he had a suitable role for her, which was that of his wife. The girl was shocked by this proposal, because she did not have aristocratic status. He told her that he would handle it himself, and that now there would be only a wedding, because according to imperial laws, it could be done only when one of them was of age, and gave her a choice. The heroine emphasized that until she was old enough, or until she had the strength, she would serve him, and one day she would repay his kindness, to which he replied that she had made the right choice and sent her to rest. Rafia was in the Soleil mansion and felt as if she were in a dream, and a moment later, a maid came into the room and asked if she was hungry, to which at first she wanted to say no, but hunger took over and she agreed. Margaret Cersei is Saleya's head maid. The girl was offered the chef's finely ground corn soup and white bread, and she was happy because she liked the combination of sweet corn and soft white bread. The maid told me that the gentleman was worried about her because she hadn't slept for 3 days, and although he is cold-blooded and impatient, he is not a terrible person who can take care of her. Rick Gunther, worried about the Duke, wanted to know the name to start a secret investigation. He tried to convey that some children are raised as mercenaries from an early age. However, the young Duke replied that he had seen everything carefully, and the girl could not look him in the eye. And mercenaries are trained so that they cannot take their eyes off their prey. And although she is hiding something, it will not do him any harm, promising that he will find out everything about her. Telling him to change his schedule in the capital and find Josh, he was about to let him go, but emphasized that when he returned, he would take the priest with him. Although this might attract the attention of the imperial family, he did not care. When she found out that a priest was coming the next day, she was very scared, because he could find out about her abilities, and she said she did not want to meet him. The young Duke recalled that the doctor had said that there was nothing wrong with her waking up only 3 days later, so he was not going to call a priest, but he wondered why the girl reacted that way. He thought that maybe she had bad memories of the church or the priest. Recalling all the events, he thought that maybe because of all this she asked to give her 3 years, as if she was constantly running from someone, and then he took her word that she would follow all the doctor's instructions. The young Duke told her that she was not a worker and should not call him master, after which he handed her a guardianship contract. The girl was afraid that she would not be able to fulfill the role of an aristocrat, but he reassured her that he would not be her guardian. In the contract, the young Duke prescribed the security she wanted so much and the education, knowledge, etc. that his wife should have, and whatever she studied, he would support her, and it would be only her achievement. Rafia thanked the young Duke and asked him how long their contract was for, because it was not an ordinary situation, and he replied that it was until she was no longer useful, or until she had a loved one, but she said she wanted to live a life without trivial feelings. The guardianship contract is kept at least until the age of majority. He held it out for signature and realized that he still did not know her name and age. The heroine replied that her name was Rafia and she was 10 years old. The young duke asked why she had not signed it yet and was very surprised because she could not write or read yet. He took her hand and began to write her name. Rafia was very pleased with how well the young duke wrote, and he promised that if she practiced, she would have her own beautiful handwriting, and the girl promised that she would do her best to learn. After signing the contract, the young duke was going to go to a meeting with his secretary Josh. While he was talking to her, a bunch of servants gathered in the hall and started discussing Rafia, saying that she was a child and crazy, so they decided to get rid of her. The girl felt unnecessary. Apologizing to the gentleman that she was not able to see him off, she went to rest. At the meeting, they gathered young Duke, Rick Gunter, and Josh. They were shocked to see the contract and started to say that it was unlikely that the child would be able to cope with this role, and whether it was worth investing so much money in him, because there was a possibility that he would just sit still. After listening to them, the young Duke said that he needed a partner, so he would teach her everything possible, to which they suggested that it would be better to adopt someone from the Duchy of Soleil, and when the child reaches the age of majority, to arrange a marriage by agreement. He was not satisfied with this, because if he made her a younger sister, he would not be able to marry her. The men were shocked by this information, because the girl did not have aristocratic status, especially since she had run away from the orphanage. Rafia was standing near the window, looking at the raindrops outside, when Margaret came up behind her and brought a blanket, and the girl said she liked the rain very much. The maid told the girl that in the capital it rains more often than it snows, but it turned out that the main character did not know what snow was. But she really liked the story about snow, and she already dreamed of seeing it, but the maid left her because she had something to do. Here we meet Neff and Nettie, the children who were supposed to help Rafia take a bath, but she remembered the rumors about her and decided that she would take a bath herself and didn't need help. The girls were puzzled by the heroine's words that she did not need help because they had overcome the fierce competition, because it turns out that it was a great honor for everyone to help her. Rafia recalled a moment when she thought everyone hated her, but the girls assured her that they had misunderstood her and meant that it was just fantastic. Taking advantage of the moment, the girls asked if they could bring her breakfast. The heroine agreed, which made Neff and Nettie very happy. They offered to choose whatever she wanted, but realized that Rafia was not at all picky. The main character asked if she would ever be able to go outside. They told her what they do outside during the year, and said they would be happy to spend time with her. Rafia found herself at the Gate of the Spirits. Opening the door, she saw the day when Yuri ordered her to kill the green-haired man in the white suit, but she no longer wanted to be his pawn. She woke up. In the morning, Margaret and Rafia went to the center to buy a new outfit for the girl. But what a surprise it was for the girl that Herzog was going with them. Before leaving, the young Duke told Margaret that she shouldn't say that she was bored, that it was time to go, that she should buy quickly and not leave her seat during the demonstration. And so that she did not worry, he said that he had business in the center, so he was going with them. After this conversation, we returned to the carriage where the three heroes were heading to the center. Margaret told the girl that the young Duke was going with them because he had his own business. But as it turned out, he had nothing to do, because then he would have taken Josh with him, and he just decided to go with them. But he was upset that the woman was openly talking to him as if he were not an expected guest, so he decided to walk around the area and join them. Margaret told the girl why there was no one there now, about the new year and the traditions of the imperial family these days, thus telling her that life was in full swing on the street these days, which is why the young Duke had come to the capital. Margaret asked what colors the girl liked, and without hesitation, she replied that she liked blue and yellow. So they got to the Madame Florence store, and the woman looked at them and tried to assure them that they did not have enough money to pay for anything in their store. Margaret was outraged by these words, but Rafia reassured her, saying that they still needed to choose at least some clothes, but she was very afraid of tarnishing the family name. Madame Florence, hoping that they would leave, said that she had a lot to do, and if they chose something to call her. At this time, the young Duke finished his business and joined them. The shopkeeper was angry that they did not leave the store, but when she returned and saw him, she was very shocked. The Duke demanded an explanation. The young Duke harassed the woman. She began to apologize to him, But she was apologizing to the wrong person. She began to apologize to Rafia as well, and the girl was uncomfortable. He came up with a punishment for Madame, deciding that he would buy up all the dresses and details of the store, including the dresses that had already been reserved. She asked not to take them at least, but this was his punishment. Taking these dresses would lower her status in the nobility. He was very outraged that the woman was rude to the ducal family of Soleil, so he threatened the woman that if she did not give the dresses back, he would have to take them away. The girl asked what he was going to do with all the dresses. He said he would give them to her, but Rafia said she did not want to wear any dresses made in this store, but she wanted to donate them to adults from slums and children from shelters. Madame Florence was very outraged by this, and she asked that her dresses be burned or cut into pieces, but not given to the poor, but the dresses had already been paid for, and she could not dispose of them. The young duke added that he forbade her to mention the child. Rafia thanked him for the gift. The young duke told her that if someone ignores her, it means that they ignore him. It means that just now in the store, she has preserved his authority with her confident manner. After their conversation, they decided to choose normal clothes for her, and after choosing a dress, the young duke asked why she didn't want to add jewelry, and learned that she was ashamed that he was spending so much on her and promised to return everything. The guy reassured her, saying it was a gift, and showed her the coat, which she immediately thought of ways to improve. The girl was shocked. It was the first time she had worn such a beautiful outfit. So that she would not wear a cloak on top, he picked up a hat for her. On the way back, Rafia decided to ask if anyone had come to look for her, because she had run away. She was constantly worried. But the young duke reassured her, because they had a strong guard, and since he took her hand, she became his, and now he would always protect her. Returning to Soleil, they were met by Neff and Nettie with a gift for Rafia. Opening it, the girl realized that there was a book, but not an ordinary book, but a menu. The girls had been working on it since last night. If the picture had a smiling face, the food had a certain taste. At night, the young duke had a training session, but his sword broke, and he was distracted by Rick saying that Josh was looking for him, and he also brought him New Year's invitations. The three of them gathered. The young duke emphasized that he was not going to go to the New Year's festival. The men tried to persuade him to stay there for at least one day, but when they realized that it was useless, they decided to find out at least the reason for this decision. He replied that he did not want to leave the girl because she was worried that she would be returned to the orphanage, and the men suggested that the lady would stay in the mansion until the end of the New Year's festival. But she was not a bird or an animal, and how is that different from an orphanage? The young duke decided to do away with the orphanage, but since it was imperial property, they decided to give a warning, but without being noticed. Before he left, the man came into the room where Rafia was sleeping, saying that he was watching her so that she would not worry, and that she would do only what she wanted. The young duke and Rick came to the orphanage and were surprised by the extraordinary silence. But they were even more surprised by the fact that the further they went, the more they felt the unbearable stench, so they decided to inspect every room. When they entered the first room, they were shocked by what they saw. There were a lot of corpses of people, but no corpses of children, but this was not the last room. But the worst thing was that in addition to the smell of blood, they could smell something else. After walking a little bit down the corridor, they realized that it was the smell of kerosene, and only one thing was clear. They had to get out of there as soon as possible. Josh didn't expect them to come back early, even thought they had changed their minds, but he was told that someone had raided the shelter before them, and when he and Rick got there, everyone was dead and probably burning brightly. The men wondered who could have done this, not knowing who the perpetrator was, but it was highly likely that it was arranged because of the search for Rafia. Since they did not know who had taken her, they most likely had time to send a warning to the orphanage, turning it into such chaos. The young duke could not understand how those people could know in advance that the person who took the child would be there today, or whether it was just a coincidence. Although even if he had not gone there, the shelter would have burned down anyway, and a couple of dozen corpses would have been found inside. They believed that there were many enemies in the orphanage, but if it was just revenge, all the dead would have had fatal wounds in the neck or heart. They were definitely looking for the girl, but if they knew where she was, they would have come here immediately. Divine power or exceptional talent was what they were interested in, so the young duke decided that they could not stay in the capital. He realized that the man who was hunting the child was scary and clever, so he decided to discuss the plan in advance. The young duke went to the emperor, congratulating him on the new year. He gave him a gift. It was the wool of a snow leopard, an extremely expensive and rare thing. The emperor was surprised. Why he did not keep it for himself? The boy decided to lie to the emperor in order to get the yogi released, and because he was trustworthy, he succeeded. Neff and Nettie were disappointed to see the lady leave, but she thanked them for what they had done for her, and the young duke watched the painting, and then he allowed the girls to go with them, and they were honored. The man emphasized that no one should say anything unnecessary, because no one should know about the existence of the lady, although she was already popular with the servants. Even the chef wanted to transfer with them to cook with all his heart for her. Young Herzog decided to seize the moment and introduce Raffia to his secretary, Josh, and his deputy commander, Rick, who had already become like an older brother to him. But when she saw him, she panicked and started apologizing, but no one understood why. The young duke calmed the girl down and offered to go to the room to rest, but the heroine refused and assured him that she was fine and they should go, because she believed that they had already lost a lot of time because of her. Rick was puzzled by the girl's reaction and decided to ask Josh if he really looked so evil that he could bring a person to tears with a single glance, and he received confirmation. Margaret was worried that it was about to snow and it would be hard for the knights. The girl did not understand the experience because she thought that the snow was soft. The woman told her that when it went, the road would be slippery, so it would be harder than on other days. Raffia felt strange. Margaret thought that she was cold and offered her a coat, but it was something else. Opening the curtain, the girl saw the young duke, who was riding next to the carriage on horseback. He saw that the girl was not feeling well and handed her a bundle. Opening it, she saw a pomegranate and was very surprised, because at this time of year it would be difficult to get this fruit. They had been traveling for several days. Rick thought that since they had been traveling for a long time, nothing should happen at the border, but the young duke said that it was not the time to let their guard down, and they should be careful until they reached the duchy. Finally, they reached their destination. The young duke woke Raffia up, and she apologized to him once again, to which he remarked that she apologized all the time. And when he got out of the carriage, the man congratulated her on her arrival, and she was shocked at how beautiful the place was. The Soleil staff greeted the young duke on his return, and the New Year reported that they were preparing for the New Year's party, but now it was more important to rest after the trip. Raffia realized that she had not wished the young duke a happy New Year, but decided that she would definitely find a moment to tell him. Anton Maurice, the chief butler of the Duchy of Soleil, met Raffia. He took them to the girl's room. She was delighted with the look of the room, but the young duke decided that it was too small. The girl insisted that she liked the room and would stay in it, and he did not object. The man confronted Raffia with the fact that she would have to say hello to His Excellency. She panicked. What would happen if he didn't like her? When she entered the duke's room, she was shocked to see how much they resembled the young duke. At first glance, he seemed stern. While they talked about her and her age, Margaret brought tea, but something happened, and the woman dropped the cup. Raffia tried to save Herzog from the hot tea, but put her hand in front of it and got badly burned. The duke asked the girl if she was okay. She said yes, but the man saw the girl's reddened skin and called a doctor. Margaret apologized to the duke and Raffia and explained that her wrists usually ached constantly, which caused her hand to weaken for a moment, and she dropped everything. The girl noticed that both of her hands were also burned. The doctor arrived in the duchy. The dukes insisted that he treat the girl's arm. The doctor examined it and said that it was not a significant burn. There would be no scar, but the bandage he applied could not be removed, and he would come tomorrow to change it. The girl was glad that the duke was not hurt, but instead she was accused of never interfering to save someone again, because she was still a child and still needed protection. The duke sent her to rest. Leaving the duke's room, the young duke began to yell at the girl to never harm her body so senselessly again, and to take care of her body as well as his. The man sent the girl to rest and returned to the duke to continue the conversation. The duke said she looked nice and asked if he really decided to marry her. The young duke remembered his words that the lower the status of the wife the better, and this girl was just an ordinary child from an orphanage. The duke asked him if he knew that their marriage could not be official because she was a commoner, but the young duke recalled how he had passed the plan through Peppo, to which the Duke said he did not understand who he had such impudence from, and the boy mentioned how often they were compared. The Duke asked why the child was suitable for this role, but the boy decided otherwise. First, to talk about the situation with the county of Esperanto. Although Soleil was in the north, compared to the usual year, this year it was warm, and the corpse had already begun to decompose. But what if something went wrong? 3 bodies were found in Soleil. The owners of the bodies are one of the vassal families of the duchy, the Esterant family. After the count became addicted to drugs, he lost his mind and killed his wife and mother, and while he was recovering, committed suicide. Fortunately, the daughter did not die at the hands of her father. She was left alone, and because she had health problems since birth, her illness worsened and she died. Upon hearing of this situation, José was concerned that the death of the count's family would become known to the imperial family. He knew that the transfer or appointment of titles should be made only by order, and the emperor would send his close associates to Soleil. The Duchy of Soleil had every right to inherit the throne as the closest relative of the imperial family, but the duchy was not an ally of the imperial family. Their relations deteriorated when José married, and since then, the emperor has pressured Soleil at every opportunity. Since he had no intention of fighting for the imperial power, he made the northern part his territory, but when an approver of the emperor came to Soleil, he was involved in the conflict. After reading his father's fears, Kazan postponed the matter for some time, and José, although he knew it was against morality, accepted Kazan's opinion and postponed the funeral for some time. In the end, the death of Count Esterant's family was kept secret. The young duke emphasized that Rafia was the same age as the count's daughter, and if they presented her as his daughter, they could make her his heir and get rid of a possible headache. The duke realized that this was a big risk, and at some point it would come out, so he suggested that for the girl's safety, he give her up for adoption to Margaret Circe, and assured her that it would be beneficial if they replaced the heirs. Since the count's family was forgotten by secular society, there was no risk of being discovered. The count was a drug addict, his wife was unbearable and belligerent, and even their daughter was so weak that she could not leave her room, which spoiled social gatherings. José asked whether the young duke was sure that the girl would be able to withstand the time of the countess's duties, and Kazan replied that she had a talent for winning people's hearts, and she was also very diligent, and he had no doubt that she would cope with it and do her best to achieve the best results. Josh was shocked, not yet rested from the road. He was already thrown with work, saying that he had to complete all the documentation in a quarter of a day. Kazan came to Rafia. The girl opened the door for him. Margaret was also there, and he told them that the girl was now the daughter of a count, and that the property and estate would soon be inherited by her. Since the title would not pass to her until she was of age, she would be called the Earl's daughter for several years. From now on, the girl will receive a perfect education. Margaret will teach her the basics of writing. Josh will tell her about the economy, the history of the empire, and all the noble families. To study the rules of noble etiquette, they will invite a private teacher and also to study social dances, playing the piano. The girl decided that she could handle everything, but she asked what she would do with it all when their contract was over, and the man said that this was in the distant future, and that she would need to make efforts to secure her place. The Count family went to the capital to show their daughter to a famous doctor, but on the way they met a group of robbers and were killed. Their daughter survived, who was saved by the young duke who was in a hurry to the capital for the New Year's festival, and they went to the capital together. Thanks to Kazan's testimony, this story became widely known in the empire. People only talked about the girl as small and unhappy, but they were surprised by why the young duke decided to accompany her. The girl asked whether it would be strange if she changed her hair color and name, but the boy reassured her that it was common for young sick ladies to do this. But since Soleil vouches for her identity, and no one can find proof that she is not real, there was nothing to worry about. The duke said that in the future her role would be great. The girl called him father, which puzzled the men, but he told her that it would be even better than her strictly calling him duke. The girl wanted to refuse, but the duke insisted. The funeral of Earl Morgan Estrant and his wife Jennifer Estrant was held. The girl was called to say goodbye to them. She promised that she would not allow anyone to harm their family. A man came up to Kazan and Herzog and said that they had suffered so much during these days. But the man replied that he had not suffered, because the family should help each other. He puzzled everyone with these words. He confronted everyone with the fact that his son and the count's daughter had decided to marry, and insisted that she would stay in the duchy as his son's future bride. and that Solea would accept Rafia as a family member, not a guest. The guests wondered if the Count's daughter was really called Rafia, and they were outraged by the way the Duke accepted new people too easily. They were throwing verbal abuse at the Esterant family when a woman interrupted them. It was Mrs. Deckers, who was sure that if the girl was sick and knew nothing, when the Duke and his son saw all her shortcomings, they would change their minds, because she had not even become a young duchess. The girl liked to study, but Margaret stopped the lesson. Rafia thought that the woman had urgent business, but it turned out that it was snowing outside, and in a moment the girl was already outside. She liked the snow. It was really cold and beautiful, but she slipped and fell, and when she looked up, she saw Neff and Nettie, and she was very happy to see them because she missed them so much. The girls had heard the story of Count Esterant's family and believed that the girl was really his daughter. They told her that when they first saw her, they were surprised why she was so thin and so worried. But they were happy that Rafia had gained a little weight since then. The young lady thanked them for the book and said that thanks to it, she could immediately choose what she wanted to eat, and she had already found her favorite dish. It was pasta, with a lot of stew and Pavlov's dessert. Neff and Nettie hugged Rafia, but Margaret pulled them away, thinking that the girl was uncomfortable. The woman said that from now on, Rafia should be on a first-name basis with all the workers, including her, because no aristocrat speaks with respect to servants. Nettie asked if this was the first time Rafia had ever seen snow, and when she heard the answer, she took the snow in her hands and started to make something. In a moment, she made a heart and gave it to the girl, which touched her very much. Josh was in the room with the Duke, offering to air the room. He saw snowmen on the windowsill. The Duke also came to the window. When the girls saw him watching, they were very scared. He told the girl to stay warm and go inside, and Josh said if he did not protect the snowmen, he would be finished. Rafia loved to write, and after rewriting her last book, she decided to find something more challenging. Believing that the highest shelves always have the most difficult books, when she climbed to the top and looked through several books, she saw a book with a family pattern. When she tried to get it, she accidentally started to fall with it, but the young Duke caught her, saying that she really shouldn't be left for a minute. When she told him how she came to be here, he realized how fast she was learning. The girl wondered how long he had been in the library, and the boy replied that he had been reading here before she came in and fell asleep. The young Duke asked her what book she wanted to read, and he would get it for her, and the puzzled girl pointed to the book, How to Tell Funny Jokes. The guy asked her why she was still addressing Anton and Margaret in a respectful manner. She replied that she couldn't yet, and after a moment he told her to address them as she felt comfortable. But when the guy left, she picked up the book that caused her to fall. In the Copan Empire, there were 2 orders, due to differences of doctrine between them. A war broke out, and the winning order condemned the losing order. Because of this, the losing order, to avoid the trial, fled to the narrow gorge of Magenta. Reading page after page, the girl realized that the losing order was the clan of her family's grandeur, and in any case, the person who wrote the book did not like that they had escaped to the Magenta Gap. Her name meant La, to God, Pia, to serve. It was also written in the book that the chosen child will be able to use 3 levels of power. The first is shyness, the second is hypnosis, and the third, although it exists, no one has been able to reach it. In the morning, the girl asked Margaret who buys books for the library, and she replied that the budget is set by Josh, and the butler Anton is responsible for buying them. She also asked if the library is used only by the ducal family, and was told that it is not. It's an old story, but there was a case when books and documents were burned at the request of the temple. At that time, the head of the family had a strong desire to study, which is why he decided that he would not cooperate with the temple, and they became enemies. So many books have survived to this day. After this story, Rafia wondered if the Soleil family had many enemies, and Margaret said no, because they are very afraid of strangers, although many people still hope to see the Blue Room to this day. She wondered why it was hard for them to be in front of people, and it was good that she could avoid it. And at that moment, she remembered that today was her first meeting with the etiquette teacher. Viscountess Deckers and Rafia met, and the girl thanked the woman for quickly agreeing to teach her. The woman asked if the heroine had been sick since childhood. The girl quickly found the answer and said that it was true, and that is why she was learning so late. The heroine asked if she could address Audrey as a teacher, but the woman asked her to call her by her first name and told her that if they built a friendly relationship, or if the girl got used to her, she would be able to call her by her first name. Otherwise, refusing to walk in circles is an aristocratic way of speaking in social circles. The girl realized that she had been tactless, but Audrey reassured her that she was here to teach her step by step. To relax the atmosphere, the woman told Rafia that they both wore green dresses, complimented each other, and that green was her favorite color. She also had green eyes, and she said it was her pride, and said it was for the chosen ones. Audrey said that green was also the color of the royal family's ears, but she recalled that she had only been in her estate and had never seen His Majesty or the princes. Because the girl was very nervous, she felt exhausted. Margaret asked how the first lesson went, and Rafia said that she found her to be a kind and bright person and a little unusual. She wondered what Viscount Deckers was like. Viscount Deckers is a vassal of the Duke's family. He deals with various matters in the capital instead of the Duke, and therefore is very rarely at the estate. And although the Viscount is not in Soleil, Audrey came from the capital. Who knows, maybe she liked being in Soleil more. The girl looked at the pile of invitations and did not know what to do with them. Margaret said that everyone was probably curious about the lady, but that it would have to wait for now. Rafia was afraid that it would be tactless, but they reassured her that she was the only survivor of such a tragedy and that they were being tactless in this case. Through one of the twins, the cook asked when the girl's birthday was. He really wanted to make a huge and beautiful 10-tiered cake, and he was already thinking of the decor. Rafia answered that, on the first day of October. Taking this opportunity, the girl asked when the Duke and the boy's birthday was. The Duke's on the last day of November, and the boy's the day after tomorrow. The girl was scared because she hadn't prepared a gift. Margaret reassured her because the Duke and his son had never celebrated this day separately. It turned out that he hated to celebrate his birthday, so in the morning of this day, they just greet him briefly. The girl decided that it was a special day, and she needed to write him a greeting letter, but she rewrote it 38 times, realizing that it was the only thing she could give him. A man came to Audrey's house. He heard that she had taken on the role of teaching the girl etiquette. He was outraged that she had not told them about it. She made it clear that she had agreed to this proposal because she had a plan, since they had time to figure it out before their wedding a few years ago. The girl decided it was not fair that the young Duke received all the reports about her, and she did not even know where he was. Rafia decided that the best solution would be to look for him in the rooms. In the first room was Rick. The man did not want to inconvenience her, and he would go to another place, but she decided that he might know where Kazine was now. He offered to give him the letter right away, but she refused, because she wanted to do it herself. Rick said that at that time the boyfriend was at the training ground, and since it was her first visit to the ground, he would take her there. Going to the site, Rafia recalled that Rick Gunther was the first person she killed to capture the deputy commander of the Knight's Squad Soleil. At that time, she just hated him, or was afraid of him, at which time a man asked if she was afraid of him. She said she was not. The man showed her where to go and turned back. She found him, but he forbade her to approach, stabbing his sword into the ground. He approached the girl. He asked why she was awake at this time. She needed enough sleep to grow. After asking the boy what was the purpose of her being here, she took out a watch. The guy immediately recognized the girl's watch, but did not understand why she needed it. The girl looked at the watch for a while, and when the time came, she congratulated him on his birthday. The young Duke was surprised and realized that his birthday had actually come. She handed him a letter, congratulating him. She decided to return back to the estate. The young Duke wanted to see her off. At first she refused, because she thought he was tired, but he asked her to go for a walk together. The girl asked if he really liked his birthday. When she heard a positive answer, she started singing a song. Although it was a little embarrassing, he liked it. In honor of his birthday, the boy asked the girl to call him by his first name, Zane. The girl did not understand how she could call the young Duke by his first name. His mother used to call him that, and since no one else called him that, he asked her. While they were talking, it was snowing outside, and the young Duke said that he never liked snow, but now he was happy for some reason. She was the last person of the Grenier clan. The day she escaped, everyone who was there died. So when she disappears in the distant future, she hopes that someone will remember them. Hoping that someone will remember Grenier, he left his mark in a safe place. The only family that did not obey the imperial family, and the temple is Soleil. It will become stronger and will never obey anyone again. Rafia looked at Zine and said that when she looked at him, her neck started to hurt. The boy got down on one knee, so now he was shorter than her. The girl started to laugh because it was the first time in 2 years since their first meeting that he was shorter than her. Then he said goodbye, got into the carriage, and drove away. The girl asked if he would be back late tonight. Margaret replied that it was likely so, because the trade problems had not been resolved for more than a year. He had gone to a meeting to reduce the cost of salt delivery because the buyer and seller had raised the price too much. Audrey and Rafia had a fan lesson today. The girl did not think it was so difficult, and now she needs to make a compress as soon as possible before the pain in the bone gets worse. But before the lesson was over, the woman wanted to suggest something. A year passed unnoticed. As they studied together the manner of ethics and speech and secular society, the girl developed very quickly. Not only theory was important in this discipline, but also practice. So the woman offered to attend a social event, something like a tea party, and brought an invitation. In the Galloway column, there is a Mrs. Bridget with brown hair. She is 2 years older than the girl, and was also Audrey's favorite. Next week, Mrs. Bridget Galloway is having her first ever tea party. They say she invites a lot of guests of her age, so it would be nice if the girl could come and make new friends. Rafia looked at the invitation and realized that it would be good for the future, and warned Audrey that she would not be able to answer right away, and thanked her for such a good opportunity to get out in public. She decided that she would think about it and send a reply to Galloway County. The girl went to the Duke's room and asked him if he was busy. He replied that he was going to rest. She brought tea. The man asked why she was doing what subordinates should be doing, and she replied that she wanted to spend more time with him. Josh turned to Rafia to help him with the Duke, because he threatened that if the snowman melted, he would be finished, and he already had a lot of things to take care of, and the girl said she would solve it. But the man didn't think so. He said not to touch them because it was his passion, and Rafia felt ashamed that she hadn't made more snowmen. Then she said that she came for a reason and wanted to ask for something. She wanted to slowly interact with other families. She practiced for a very long time, and no longer behaves distractedly. She did not spill tea and put the cup down without a sound. Her husband looked at her and realized that he had not seen such a careful and calm child since birth. The girl asked what Zine was like, and the Duke replied that he did not look like a child at all. He was shocked that she called him Zine. She told him about the invitation to the tea party. The man replied that if necessary, let them come, but the fact was that she wanted to see how other families arrange it and then organize a tea party on her own behalf. He understood her and asked which family was happy with it. County Galloway has long been very good at taking advantage of themselves, so he allowed her to go to tell him what the situation was like. He also added that if anything ever embarrassed her, she should tell him immediately. Rafia wrote a letter back to the Galone family. She was worried that no one would say something bad about her poor writing. One of the twins said that if she had received such a letter from the lady, she would have kept it as a family heirloom for the rest of her life. The girl asked if Zine had arrived. She was told that he hadn't, but would be back soon. She decided to go meet him. The girls wanted to take her, but Rafia said she was not a little girl anymore and let them go about their business. The guards were talking about how sword blades dull very quickly, and then they saw Rafia. They were puzzled and said that the young Duke had not yet returned. She replied that she had gone out to meet him and asked if they had finished training today. The men were glad to have the opportunity to talk to her until Zine arrived. She heard them talking about swords dulling quickly and asked them to show her, but they said it was a dangerous object for her. She said that she would not wave it and would only look at it, and that it would remain a secret for the young Duke. The men refused for a long time, but the promise that no one would know and the sweet look of the lady confused them. The girl held out her little finger to make a deal, and the men almost quarreled about who would pull in return. The girl said she already wanted to see the sword. They knelt down and held out both. In order not to cause an argument, the girl promised that she would try to examine both. She realized that the swords were dull not because they were not sharpened properly. The girl ran her finger over the sword, which scared the men. She noticed something strange. Perhaps it was corrosion. Rafia asked how they cared for their swords. They said that the main method of care was to wash them with water and wipe them with a dry cloth. She asked where the water came from and learned that it was from Mount Calais. She went to the mountain. It was still daytime, and now the sun had set. She did not know how long she was there, and it seemed to her that she was walking in circles and realized that she needed to go back as soon as possible. Suddenly she heard a noise. It was hungry wolves. 5 hours before she found herself in the forest in a large blue hall, the girl had already tried on the outfit. It seemed more comfortable than her everyday clothes. She told one of the girls that the guest should not be more elegant than the organizer of the party. She turned her head and saw the Duke standing and looking out the window. Although he had a lot to do, he said he was out for a walk. He asked if she was leaving, and if she remembered his words not to tolerate any circumstances. She said of course she did. The man sent guards with Rafia to protect her at the cost of his own life, and wished her to be careful. The girl promised to return soon and set off. Mrs. Bridget was sitting at the table with the other girls. She was announced that Rafia had arrived. She greeted her and apologized that they had started the tea party without her. She didn't even notice how late she was for the appointed time, and anyway, it was not nice to her. Despite the fact that they are taught by the same teacher, there must be a reason why they do this. The girl said that it was not normal, but they started anyway. Bridget decided to introduce all the guests because they knew each other, and Rafia met them for the first time. They were Mrs. Emily First, Mrs. Lucy Harshen. They greeted each other and continued the tea party. The girl thought that they would avoid her and not talk to her, but surprisingly, everyone continued the conversation. Although she felt unnecessary in their company, she was asked that she lived in a big blue hall, and since it was not her home, they asked if she felt uncomfortable there. She said that she did not. She was treated well by everyone, and it was very calm. Mrs. Bridget asked if she got along well with the young Duke, and that was the reason why they were not friendly with her, Mr. Zine, but the girl had no reason to accept such an attitude in return. She said that he cares about her and is very kind, and the girls laughed at her and said that despite being his fiancé, she still knows very little about him, that he is not the kind of person who opens up to another partner so easily. Rafia said that it was with them because they are different people, and how can he treat everyone the same? One day they will be able to see it, his friendly smile, and even if she tells them more, they will still not believe it until they see it with their own eyes. Audrey and little Bridget came to see the girls. They stopped by to make sure everything was going well. Audrey was surprised to see Rafia and thanked her for being able to defend her mentor's honor. Audrey introduced Rafia to Countess Heroine Galloway. The Countess finally saw the girl's face, and she in turn apologized for declining the invitation due to her health condition. The woman asked what they were planning to do. Bridget said that they would talk a little more and then leave, because tea does not fill the stomach. Audrey said that she had prepared an interesting event. Bridget was the first student she was very proud of, and it was worthy of praise that she had organized such a wonderful tea party today. So she, as a mentor, prepared a little entertainment. The rules were simple. With Mrs. Galloway's permission, she has hidden several notes in different places. Each person will have to find 2 notes. It's a kind of treasure hunt. But the path where they are hidden is connected to the forest, which is used as hunting grounds, so you need to be careful not to go too deep. Emily First found the first note, which said Zil Riemann's music box. Zil Riemann is a famous master, so she thought it was wonderful. The next note was found by Bridget Gallen. It said, net fan. The girl really hoped that it was similar to the one used by the teacher. Rafia decided that it would be difficult for her to get close to them, so she decided to take a short walk around the neighborhood and only then return. She was enjoying the forest when she saw a fox. It was injured, most likely because there were hunting grounds nearby, and it fell into a trap. The girl decided to help her. The fox began to run away, but the heroine ran after her and fell, and suddenly realized that she was lost. She panicked, began to feel bad, like when they were in the carriage on their way to Soleil. A man passed by who was definitely looking for her. The heroine realized that she was walking in circles and needed to get back as soon as possible. She turned and saw the first Yuri who took her from the shelter. He asked if she liked playing hide and seek, and told her real name and decided to return her to the place where she should be. Suddenly, Mr. Zine appeared out of nowhere and protected the girl from the wolves. Yuri started to walk away. The girl asked how he got here and started to cry. The boy tried to calm her down and asked her to close her eyes because it looked scary and he would protect her. He wanted to erase them with his aura, but he still had problems with regulation and was afraid to hurt the girl. There were a lot of wolves, and the boy realized that if he went on like that, they both could be in danger. Zine wanted her to be closer to him so that he wouldn't worry, but he realized that his strength was running out. So he told her that if she went a little to the right of here, there would be a horse, and that she should wait for him there and ask him not to worry about him. The boy decided to use his aura. The girl was standing near the horse, waiting for Zine. Suddenly he came up to her. She saw him bleeding and was afraid that he was wounded. The young duke said that everything was fine, that the blood was not his. But in fact, he was wounded. Rafia was very worried that it was because of her, and she started crying. The guy said that everything was fine, and at such moments only gratitude is enough. He admitted that he was able to find her only because of Peppo. They went home. The boy told her to be on the horse, and he would walk beside her because her leg was injured. The girl gave him an ultimatum that if he continued to resist, she would ride alone and leave him alone. Zine asked her if she knew how to ride. She said she was learning. He wondered how she would lead with such short legs and a wrong stance, but he decided to trust her and check how she was riding. Meanwhile, the Duke arrived in Galloway County and emphasized that if he could not find his daughter-in-law today, everyone knew what he could do. The man said there was no accident during the game. The Duke was not satisfied with this answer because he believed that the Galloway family was involved in the disappearance of his daughter-in-law. The knights combed the entire forest, and suddenly, Zine and Rafia appeared on the horizon. Margaret was shocked to see them. Zine said that everything was fine, but the woman did not understand how they could be fine if they returned with such wounds. But the guy said that there were too many eyes, and he would explain everything later. The Galloway family once again offered their condolences for the incident. The Duke did not respond to him, only emphasized to provide horseback escort for the crew of the young Duke and his bride. Bridget had the misfortune to say that they made a big fuss about some girl. Her father had to apologize for his daughter. He wanted to make her apologize, but she shouted that she shouldn't do that because she could speak her mind out loud. She also added that her parents also think so, because if it were not for this girl, Bridget would have been the bride of the young Duke. Her father could not stand it and hit her in the face to silence her. Taking the girl by the hair, the man apologized to the Duke that he had failed to raise his daughter properly. The Duke said that he thought the problem was not only with the girl, and emphasized that they should behave properly, while Audrey looked at the Count, gesturing for him to be silent. A few days later, a single bundle of hair arrived from the Earl of Galloway's family. It was a shoe vow to ban Bridget's activities in secular society until her hair grew back, but the Duke was dissatisfied with their behavior and deprived the Earl of the right to own hunting grounds. Zine did not regain consciousness. The girl was by his side all the time. She recalled how he said that everything was fine, although in fact it was not. And as soon as they arrived at the estate, he lost consciousness. She felt sorry that spiritual power was useless in such a situation. She took him by the hand and began to ask him to get better, and at that time he came to. The girl at first thought that she was dreaming, but it was real. The boy immediately began to ask if she was hurt. The girl was shocked. She was shocked, because he was injured. But for some reason she was worried about her and called him a fool, to which she replied that he had been in bed for 3 days, and she was fine. He said he would protect her, and they would both be safe. He started laughing and told her to stop crying, because it only made her uglier, and said that it was time for her to go to bed because she would not grow up. But the girl said that she did not have to grow up. The main thing was his health, so she asked to stay by his side. The guy asked her to lie down next to him, which shocked her. He said he would not be able to sleep when she was sitting so uncomfortably. He sat down because of the pain, and said if she was uncomfortable, he was uncomfortable, and if she did not lie down, he would continue to sit like that, and if he continued, his wound would open. She laid down next to him and said she was very nervous. If you think about it, he was actually much younger than her, but why does he seem so grown up and makes her feel comfortable? Zine went outside and was approached by Rick Gunter, who asked him if he could move and not to overdo it. He replied that thanks to the girl's care, he felt much better, but Rick still emphasized that he should not overdo it and not aggravate his condition. The young Duke did not understand why everyone around him was grumbling so much, because he said that he felt great, although in reality he was not so great. Then he was sure that he had coped with everything and did not even think that another beast was sitting in ambush. He allowed his guard to drop, but he had to become even stronger to protect his dear people. He asked her why she looked so happy, and she said that it was because they always eat together during his vacation, which was very nice. The guy said that in any case, she would be 13 soon, and he would be able to find out everything about her. The girl replied that she did not have to wait. She could tell him now because they have trust, although it could be dangerous, because there was no time to tell him before, and then someone was hunting for her in the forest. The boy said that he was busy rescuing her and could not see the man who disappeared into the trees, but judging by his physique, he was about his age. Zane asked if it was the same person who hunted her in the capital. The girl confirmed and wanted to tell him the reason for the hunt. Rafia said that she was Grenier. The guy asked her again. She said that it was the name of her family, which was destined to bring the words of God to the world, and Rafia is also no longer used everywhere as a word of a dead language, and the very mention of their family tree is now banned by the church. Kazane asked that she was being persecuted only because she belonged to this family, and no matter how many other religions they were, she was just an innocent child who knew nothing about anything. She said that in the Grenier family, sometimes someone is born with spiritual power. Such children are called Rafia, but this power can be used only after reaching the age of 13. The words spoken by the voice acquire the power of conquest, and thanks to it, you can control the strength and mind of another person. The boy replied that he had noticed it even earlier when she told him about her dislike of priests, and he suspected that she had a bad relationship with the church. But he had not even imagined that she had this kind of ability, and asked why it was until she was 13. She answered that she did not know, but she learned about it from a dream. After that, everything was exactly the same as in the dream, starting with the arrival of a person who wanted to become her guardian. So she believed in everything that happened in the dream. She said that she started running away because she knew who would come after her and how she would be treated. Zine asked if she recognized the person's identity. The girl answered Yuri, and although they had different ages and genders, they called themselves the same and had the same leader who took her from the shelter. He was called the first Yuri. In a dream, they caught her and began to force her to do all their bidding. Using her power, she manipulated and harmed many people, including his close associate. Now the guy understood why she reacted the way she did when she saw Rick for the first time. He asked her if she wanted to change the future she saw in her dream. She said yes, and she needed his help. She didn't want Yuri to use her, and she was told that no one would let him. He asked what it meant that she was not surprised to see his aura, because she had seen it in a dream, and Rafia replied that yes, and when it comes to him, one should not be surprised, and she had read about it in a book of imperial history. It said that the first emperor had a similar power, and Zine was part of his bloodline, so it was clear that he also had it. As she told me this, she mentioned that she had a gift for him. She handed him a beautiful sword, saying that she had learned that he had broken his sword that day, and since he had broken it because of her, she had prepared another for him. The boy said that it was not necessary, but accepted it. He looked at the sword and said that it was not an ordinary sword, and looked more like a weapon for a ceremony than a fighting weapon. She said that before she bought it, she had learned everything about it. The merchant said it was made of elven stone and diamonds, so it was definitely strong. She put her hand on the sword and said that she hoped this sword would be able to protect Mr. Zine, and that no matter what happened, it would never break. She sincerely believed that if he put his intentions and will into this sword, he would be able to cut through anything. For a moment, it seemed to the boy that the sword was glowing, and he did not understand whether it was an illusion or reality. The girl said that there was something else she wanted to say. She said that she would soon get laid, and she scared the young duke with these words. He did not understand what lie down meant, or whether she meant that someone had poisoned her. She said that this was not the case, and that perhaps this process was necessary so that she could use spiritual power by action. She said that in a dream it took 1 month, but now the situation is developing differently, so the transition may be longer, or vice versa, faster. The guy asked if it was possible that using this power would overload her body. She did not know what to answer him. The guy understood why she bled to death the day they first met. He asked her not to use this power, but she reminded him that this was exactly what she had promised from the beginning. He wondered if she meant what she said about killing people. She said that it was clear that no one would believe that such a small girl was capable of such a thing. Zine said that if someone bothered him, he would deal with it himself. What was the point of revenge if it was not done by his hands? He said that only those who are incapable of doing anything use other people's forces for their own interests. Such people are simply miserable, and until their death, they will not be able to understand the meaning of their goals. Kazine asked her, and she said that she would if she was against the doctor. What about the priest? The girl replied that if he found out that she was Grenier's heir, she would be accused of heresy, and then they would never support the duchy. The guy said they didn't have many options. First, they needed to track down the first Yuri, and it would be difficult because he is secretive and never shows himself in public. He asked the girl if she had any idea who it could be. She said she had one. She said firstly, the information that she was sick should not slip out and no doctor should be involved, and asked to fire all the tutors. The young duke wondered if she thought there was a suspicious person among the teachers, and asked if it would be better to keep this person close to him so that he could keep an eye on him. Yuri can predict her actions, especially since he knows the exact time when the powers will manifest themselves, and if she gradually begins to break the threads that can lead to her being found out, then perhaps when they all break, they will increase the chance of finding him. Today was the last lesson with Audrey. She was sad to end it. She considered Rafia the best student and decided to ask why she decided to stop studying so abruptly. The girl said that it was because of family matters. The woman sharply asked if the girl had any dislike for the Duke or his son. The girl did not understand her. Audrey continued that she had to choose a couple at such a young age, and if she did not like the groom, and she could not do anything about it, she would find someone else who would love her more than the young Duke. She asked if the Duke hadn't been trying to tame her since she was a child, and if she hadn't doubted all this at least once. The girl interrupted her and replied that if it was about mind control, she was wrong. But the woman said that she meant something more seductive in its cunning, something that breaks the human soul and will. Rafia answered whether Saleha had any reason for this. From their first day, they were so grateful and great, so she asked not to press her good nature and not to cross the line. From the outside, it might seem that Saleha chose her, but it was quite the opposite. She also added that she decided that Mr. Zine would be her king, and she was happy with everything, especially since she had learned a lot during this time, and that she should contact Anton for payment. Audrey hissed through clenched teeth that who would accept such small funds at all. Then the girl asked if the ducal family's funds were a pittance to her, then what was the purpose of her coming to the Soleil estate? Despite the loud tragedy, the ownership of the hunting grounds was transferred quietly, but she clearly remembers that day. The one who suggested the treasure hunt game, the person who encouraged her to be in the forest, it was her, the Viscountess. The girl understood that the woman was trying to get closer to her for a specific purpose, but she did not want to question the reason why she was pushed to go to the hunting grounds. But this did not mean that Rafia forgave her, so she gave her a chance to leave quietly. She added that he did not tolerate the slightest mistakes, and if he found out about the mistake, what kind of punishment he would come up with for her. But whatever her goals, the girl did not want her teacher to get hurt. Rafia doesn't care what Audrey says. Now that their plan has failed, Yuri will start to worry and will work out a new plan, at least until he buys some time. Audrey came to Yuri because he called her and said he was going out for some air and looked in on her, and it turns out Saleha is more peaceful than he imagined, and he doesn't even have to make an effort. He said that he appreciated the way she took care of the family and strived for success. So he shared his name with her. He trusted her and had high hopes. But what he learned was very disappointing. And now that he had almost got the gem, he had the wrong person. The woman said that she had done everything she could, but the man said that futile efforts were like garbage. He asked her not to question his devotion, to try until she was completely exhausted. Then he took her by the throat and choked her very hard. He said that if he needed her, he would send a man to her, so she needed to hide for a while. And he began to think about what to do next. Rafia was looking out the window when there was a knock on her door. It was Zine. He asked her if she was worried about not being able to leave the mansion for 10 days. She said that everything was fine. Neff and Nettie were bringing her books and playing with her. She said that it was so lively outside that maybe some guests had arrived, and he said that was why he had come, that the imperial family had sent a messenger, but no one knew the reason for such a sudden arrival, so she should stay in her room and not show herself. A messenger arrived at the duchy to read an order from the emperor. The boy was a little late, but apologized. The messenger asked if everyone was really present, because he had heard that the young duke had recently gotten engaged, but they replied that the girl was not feeling well at the moment and was under house arrest. The duke asked if the emperor had ordered him to find out that his daughter-in-law was under house arrest. The man read out an order that stated that the sword of the empire, the Duchy of Soleil, by order of the emperor, must participate in the war to suppress the monsters from the west. They have been given the great honor of sacrificing their lives in the name of protecting the emperor. A week ago, at a cabinet meeting, a decision was made to use more than 50% of the knights from orders belonging to the families of the highest aristocracy, and the second and third princes from the imperial family also took part in the battle. The Duke tried to find out why Raffia refused all tutors and that she was under house arrest, but the guy only said that he was acting on her own free will and that they should wait until she told them everything. Joseph, as the emperor was called, has long wanted to appropriate the Western lands, and finally he had the opportunity to do so. It seems that he wants to make his kingdom even more grandiose. The emergence of a common enemy will strengthen the unity of the inhabitants of the empire, and it can also change the minds of those who have recently begun to worship in front of the temple. In addition, they will be able to enslave the enemy, which will have a good effect on business. But perhaps we should not be in such a hurry, since the emperor first needs to decide on an heir anyway. The war is a good opportunity to test the innate talents of the monarch. The guy said that they needed to choose a clear course. Perhaps before the Duke's reign, enmity with the imperial family was in order, but he is different, and he has a person he must protect. He does not want to make enemies. The Duke replied that Joseph's sons might differ from him, but let him do what he thought was right. He needs to weigh up all the strengths and weaknesses, so he will take part in the war. The boy asked the Duke for a favor and wanted him to appoint Rick as Raffia's escort. He was the only person he could rely on and trust. Kazane asked Rick to collect a list of the knights of the order who would go to battle during that day and bring it to him by midnight. He told Josh that he would go to war with him, but he was a secretary and did not have a weapon. The Duke looked at his son and realized how much he had grown up, and he mentally turned to the boy's mother and said that their son had grown up. The boy met Raffia and looked at her for a long time. The girl asked him what was wrong, and he replied that she had matured a lot. She learns very quickly and always exceeds all expectations. She is strong, so he believes that she will cope well without him. Raffia didn't understand what he was talking about. She thought he was leaving again for a few days on business and asked if it had anything to do with the imperial messenger. The guy replied that it would most likely take several years, if not more, rather than a few days. He told her about the Western lands, and that this time a full-scale expedition was coming, and that by order of the emperor they must participate in the war to conquer the monsters of the West. So tomorrow morning he was leaving for the capital. The girl asked if it was not very dangerous. The boy replied that his role was to support the two princes who would lead the troops on the front line. She said that he should be careful. The boy gave the girl a gift. It was a pen that Mr. Zine used to use all the time, the only memory of his mother. He said that the feathers needed care so that they would not deteriorate during his absence, asked her to take care of it, and write so that it would not harden. Raffia asked if she could write letters with this pen. He didn't have to answer them. He would obviously be busy and wouldn't have time to answer. The guy allowed her to, saying it would be appropriate, saying that Pepo would help with it. The guy asked her if she would be able to hold it if she was under house arrest, although it was a preposition to avoid showing herself to strangers, although in any case it would be problematic. She was already sad that the young Duke would be leaving her for so long. She would miss him very much. He said that while he was gone, she would be protected by Rick. She said that Rick was his assistant. Zine said that even if he scares her and she is not comfortable with him, she should still keep him close to her. He is the only person who can protect her in her absence. He took her hand and asked her what she was going to do. She said she hoped he would return safely. He told her not to worry and that he would be there soon. The girl watched through the window as Zine and his army left the estate, watching them with her eyes. She was very sad and asked him to return in one piece as soon as possible. It had been about 10 days since he had left, and she sat sadly holding his pen, wondering where Mr. Zine was. In that amount of time she thought he was probably in the West, but she was glad that thanks to Pepo, she could hear from him from time to time. As she heard it, the second and third princes were in charge of separate divisions, and Mr. Zine was in charge of a supporting detachment, controlling supply issues, and fortunately, he was less likely to be seriously injured in the rear than on the front line. She wondered when would be the best time to send the letter to Zine. He was probably very busy, so if she sent it now, he wouldn't even have time to read it. Now was not the time for that, and she should slowly prepare. Raffia came to Herzog and asked if Zine had told him her story. The man replied that he had not told him anything and only asked him to wait until she told him everything, and asked how long she was going to be under house arrest. She said that soon her time of house arrest will come to an end, but before that happens, she wants to ask him for help. She said that only Mr. Zine and Margaret know about it. that she will soon be pregnant, so she asked not to be afraid of it. He did not understand what she meant. She said that she would soon have a severe fever, but everything would be fine and she would not die. The man did not understand what she meant and did not know who to call, a doctor or a priest. She asked him not to call anyone. She said that these symptoms were just an appearance and she would not actually get sick, but no one should know about her condition. Her husband did not understand what she meant and asked her to explain. They talked, and she apologized for not telling him about it before. He said he had heard the story of her family's existence. Rafia said she understood that her presence could be a threat to the duchy, but she hoped he would help her. The Duke said she was already part of the Duchy of Soleil, and to hurt her was the same as to hurt their entire family, and he would certainly protect her, and promised to find out something about Yuri. But she had one more request. After this painful transition takes place and her condition improves, she would like to take up official activities. As the daughter of Count Esterant, she would like to start to slowly prove herself. Since her name is widely known, she is still afraid that Yuri will discover her, but she realized that running away would not solve anything. She wants to become stronger. He said that the Count's property was now under Soleia's consignment, but he would return it to her so she could use it as she wished. He promised her that he would complete all the procedures before she opened her eyes again. He believed that she would cope. The maids talked among themselves and decided that since Rafia was under house arrest, the Duke did not like her very much, especially since Kazine had left, and she had no one to protect her. Margaret came to the Duke and informed him that the girl had gone to bed. She understood that he had forbidden her, but asked if they really could not call a doctor, to which the man replied that this was exactly what she had asked, not to call anyone. He asked the woman to keep an eye on the twins, because no one should know about it, except that she should not leave Rafia's side until she regains consciousness. The Duke said he was very busy, but he would still visit the girl sometimes. The girl realized that in her past life, she only needed to think about them to make them appear to her. But why is it different now? Most likely, everyone is worried about her, and she needs to come to her senses as soon as possible. The girl fell into the water, but did not even get wet and did not get hurt. She saw a large number of large gears, but did not understand why they were all standing. Perhaps there was a connection between them, and if so, there was definitely a mistake somewhere, and she found it. It was more difficult than she thought, but she managed and they started moving. Only one mistake led to a complete stop of the whole mechanism, like dominoes. She realized that if she did it, her life would be different. She looked around and saw the gate of spiritual power, but something told her that something was wrong. The place where she was looking for the gate was darkened. Now everything was different. She realized that this time she would succeed. Now she would never use her power. A voice was calling her. He asked if she had found her power. If so, she should wake up as soon as possible. Everyone was waiting for her. It seemed to her that Zine was calling her. He said that her favorite rain was falling outside, so she had to wake up as soon as possible. In the morning, Margaret came to the girl's room and saw that she was already awake. She asked how long she had slept, and the woman replied that she had slept for half a month. Rafia thanked the woman for taking care of her and said she would thank the others when she was better. The heroine asked if anyone had come to her last night. Margaret was surprised and said that she had been with the girl all night and no one else was around. But she said she had left for 15 minutes to wet a towel. No one would be able to come in because Rick was standing guard at the door. She asked if something had happened, and the girl replied that she had just had a dream. She didn't understand why it was so real, if she was hallucinating, or if he had really come all this way for 15 minutes. Suddenly, an excited Duke burst into the room, saying that as soon as he found out that the girl had regained consciousness, he immediately rushed to her and apologized for scaring her. He also added that he had solved all the problems she had mentioned earlier. He also told her that she could do whatever she wanted, but if she needed help, she could always turn to him. Rafia asked if they had solved the problem with the salt turnover that Mr. Zine had been negotiating before he left, and asked her husband to entrust her with the negotiations. The man didn't think about it for long, but said that the girl was growing up before his eyes, and then handed the matter over to her. The girl came to Rick's room, saying that she would not take up much of his time, thanked him for looking after her all this time. The man was embarrassed and said that he was only doing his duty. She said that she would like to establish a relationship, because she also chose Zine as her king. Each of them plays a different role. but somehow they care about him. So she hoped for their friendship in the future and promised that she would no longer cry and run away at the sight of him. The man accepted her friendship, and as a sign of reconciliation, Rafia suggested that they go on a hike. She wanted to strengthen her endurance. They did go, but the girl was quickly exhausted. Rick offered to carry her on his back, but she refused. Then he told her that they carry much heavier things on their backs during their daily training, and added that after her illness, it would be difficult for her to get to the top, and if he carried her, they would get there faster. She said that climbing to the top was not the most important thing for her, and suggested that they rest, look around, and gradually climb further. Rick looked at her and said that he did not think she would wear the young duke's clothes, to which she replied that she did not have time to choose an outfit. Rafia asked where they were, and Rick said they were halfway there. It was very hard to climb the mountain, and she wondered if she could find it. Suddenly, she saw what she was looking for near her foot and started to eat. Rick was puzzled by this and said that they had to go down the mountain so that she would not get sick. The girl laughed and said that she would not get sick. After all, she had found rock salt. And since they had found this piece here, there must be a cave somewhere nearby, and she suggested that they find it. Having found the cave, they entered it, and there were very large reserves. Rick was amazed, because he had only seen it in pictures and books before. She suggested that we just look around and go back before it got dark. She wanted to show the piece of salt to the Duke as soon as possible. The Duke was surprised, because he considered salt to be an imported commodity, so he did not even think to look for it within his possessions. He asked the girl how she came up with it. She said that before she went to bed, she gathered all the facts she knew. Because night swords often deteriorate, she asked about the source of them and went with Rick to check the mountain. After several days of extensive searching, 6 salt caves were found on Mount Kales, all of them large enough with extensive reserves. The Duke emphasized that at this rate, rock salt will become one of the main outputs of Salaya. Rafia suggested making colored salt. Since aristocrats liked baths with salt, it would be in demand, and it would also be possible to make jewelry. Since there is salt in Salaya, they can solve the problem with the traders that has been bothering them all along, and since Rafia took over, she could do as she pleased, either negotiate with them or simply terminate the contract. The girl asked who the person was with them, and the Duke said it would be wrong to leave all the responsibility on her, so he found her an assistant. That's how she met Tom. Rafia immediately asked Tom for a favor. She asked what company the young Duke had previously dealt with, and he replied that it was Borzo. She immediately told him to inform them about the termination of the contract and immediately look for a new one. He asked her if she had any personal requests. She said it would be nice if she had some contacts in the largest and oldest city of Copenhagen. Although it was difficult to establish contacts with large companies, Tom promised that he would do his best. Rafia wrote a letter to Zine, asking about his health, telling him that she had recently pretended to be awake from a long sleep and had heard his voice. The dream was so vivid that she still thinks he really visited her. But since his path was far to the west, he could not possibly end up in the Soleil estate. She said that she had decided to deal with the salt issue and found the cave. And since he had been working on this matter for a long time, she would try not to disappoint him. The Duke even allowed her to use his office, and she hoped that this news would at least slightly dispel his worries. The girl was in talks with Tom, and he told her that at this rate, salt production will gain momentum. He added that he had contacted Orantis, and surprisingly, they responded positively, and their representative would personally come to Salaya. Baronet Jagan Orantis arrived in the duchy. He was the head of the largest trading company in the empire, but he was quite modest. He asked if anyone else would join them. The girl decided that probably because she was young, he did not take her seriously, so she decided to ask him a personal question. She asked at what age he started working in the company. He replied that he was 14 at the time. Then she asked if he was the youngest employee within her company, and he said no, because there were others who started working at 10. Rafia said that she was 13, so everything was fine. The man was amazed because he thought she was much younger. The girl showed a piece of salt from the caves. Jason examined it and said that it was suitable for sale, but he would think about it. The heroine asked if she understood correctly that he was evaluating their salt. The man said that it was so good that he was even jealous. She used her power and said that she wanted to hear his real thoughts, whether he liked the offer. He said that he liked it because it was of high importance. Mr. Orantis himself was clearly eager, but he still needed to be pressed a little. He said he would get back to them. However, the girl replied that it was not necessary, because they were not the last company Rafia had applied to. The puzzled man said that if the term he had announced was too long, he asked for at least 3 days to think about it, but the girl refused. She stated that his company had a good reputation, so she contacted them first, but they were not eager enough, so she had no choice but to sign a contract with a company that had a greater interest in the case than to just sit and wait for a response. After listening to her, the man agreed to sign a contract, but the girl decided to change the conditions. At first, she offered him an income in the form of a fourth part, and now she is increasing her share to 7. The man accepted the terms, and in return, she would only do business with Orantis, a rock salt mining company, and they signed a contract. But in addition to the contract, the girl decided to ask him for a personal request. Rafia sent a letter. Rick asked if she had received any responses, and she said that she would continue to write letters even if they were not answered to practice her handwriting. The man asked her if she was not sad. She said that she was actually waiting for an answer and hoped that Zine reads all her letters. Rick replied that given how the guy treats her, the answer will come sooner or later. The girl admitted that she had already received one letter, brought by the Duke, who said that it was for her. The letter said that she did not cause him any difficulties. Rafia met Viscount Deckers, as he does business only in the capital. She had never met him before. She asked him how the Viscountess was doing. He replied that she had gone to a monastery without giving any explanation, only that she wanted to rest in a quiet place. After this conversation, she wondered, because she knew that Audrey had failed. But why Yuri did nothing, she began to strengthen her name through business. She began to attract more people, but Yuri was not among them. What was he up to? Rafia has already reached the age of majority. The twins said that she has become so grown up. She said that now Mr. Zine will not be able to joke about her being small. She wondered if Zine has changed much and when he will return. The girl said that they should not worry, because it has long been known that the men of the Soleil family are naturally strong and hardy. The girl came to the Duke. He said that 5 years had passed since the beginning of the war, and he said that it was time for her to go out into the world. In any case, she will have to make her debut this year, because she has been dragging it out for 3 years, and for that matter, she invited Herzog to be her partner. He was stunned. The Duke asked if it would be better to choose a young man to accompany her rather than an old man like him, but she said it was better to have him than some stranger from another family. Besides, if she went to the hall with him, people would look at her with envious eyes, so she was upset and said that he was right and she didn't need anyone but Zine. There were quarrels in the Western camp because of the failed operation. The princes were fighting with each other. Josh asked him not to show indifference during the field training. After the meeting was over, Josh decided to talk to the boy. He asked him not to behave like that during military training. Doesn't he feel the stares when he does that? He decided not to show too much participation so that he would not be hated. The man spoke up when he said that he has been sitting in this dusty place for 5 years. A conquest that should have ended long ago has turned into a protracted war, and he can hardly keep from laughing when he hears someone call it temporary difficulties. Kazane was thinking about writing an application for demobilization when they received letters, both of which were for Josh. The man was upset that he had not heard from Rafia for more than a month. Josh emphasized that he shouldn't be so stubborn, and if he was worried about something, he should write a letter first and ask why she hadn't written to him lately. She would be very happy to receive a letter from him. Cassine held on for more than 5 years, but his patience was coming to an end, because in 3 weeks Josh received 2 letters from Tom, and no letters from Rafia for 2 months. Besides, he learned the news that the girl was preparing for her debut. This was the main reason. At the meeting, Zine said that they had 5 days to end this war, and he shocked all the men. No one understood how this was possible. They had been fighting this war for 5 years. How was he going to end it in 5 days? One day at dawn, the boy conducted his own investigation. He followed the monster to a narrow gorge at the end of the desert and learned that there was a magic stone there. He could not check the connection with other dimensions, but the monsters came from there. So if they managed to destroy that stone and deal with the remaining monsters, it would be over soon. It was dangerous, but they were the only ones he could rely on to get it over with and get him home. The second and third prince began to quarrel again. Zien decided to remind them of his presence, because he was tired of watching these two quarrel. Suddenly, he was asked if it was true that he had a fiancée. The men began to ask what she looked like and wondered what she was like as a person, because they had not seen any portraits of her. Zine said that since the conversation started, he had a lot to tell, and he planned to end this war, but it turned out that they would not be able to return until they had completely conquered the West. He said that he would end it. The princes asked what he meant by that he was trying to distinguish himself in this war. Zine said that, as they said, he had a fiancée at the manor, and he did not expect to leave her alone for so long. After that, he decided to ask again whether the complete elimination of monsters was an obstacle to the conquest of the West, a sufficient reason for the withdrawal of their troops, and was told that it was. 2 days later, at lunchtime, the monsters will split into 2 packs and disperse across the canyon, so each of the princes will be able to go in one direction to hold off the onslaught, and it is clear that the one who kills the most monsters will receive more glory. A prolonged war is not conducive to a favorable reign, and who knows how long the emperor's patience will last. It is important to prove themselves as princes, but it is important not to forget that the result speaks for itself, and this is the only opportunity he can offer. He emphasized that everything they would see today could not be disseminated, so they set off. A fierce battle ensued, but Kazine managed to reach the stone and called for help. The girl realized that her debut was taking more energy than she thought. She expected it to be limited to a modest banquet, but the Soleil family had other plans, and she also realized that the family had many relatives. Having solved her problems with preparing for the debut, she decided that it was time to write a letter to Zane, although she did not know what to say to him. But first, she should write that she had a lot of things to do lately, which is why she did not write and inform him about the debut.